Right, meet again, Gordon, and I guess you're running a tight ship these days with the early access already alive and kicking with War of the Vikings. Can you tell us a little bit first about sort of what made you want to go into early access and sort of the decision to do that?
Yeah, so we basically were looking at doing some type of pre-order or pre-purchase campaign. And then we also wanted to do a long-running beta and try and get a lot of user feedback so that we, to try and ensure that the game was as well balanced so that there's the best combat experience possible at release. And those kind of two things fit together, and it made sense in Steam's, goals that they had for early access, which is to really, involve the community. So they had set up, basically a structure to support that. So it made it easier for us than us kind of creating that infrastructure ourselves. So that's why we really went with that. It kind of all the pieces fit together, and it was kind of like, okay, this makes sense, let's do it. And we just kind of went, feet first. And we're the first game for Paradox to utilize that. And then next up was Magica Wizard Wars. So
that made me a little bit piqued my interest there. What kind of infrastructure is there on the Steam side for you as a developer to sort of work with this?
Yeah, so they have the community, of course. They have the Steam setup where they have users who are logged in, and you can see who actually owns the game. When they're posting, you can control in their game hub like who can post in what section. So to post in our forums, you have to own the game, because we want to make sure that we're getting the feedback from the correct people who have actually played. We can tend to see how long they've played, so then we can kind of put some pieces together. If somebody got frustrated really early on and it's like they post and they're like, I had this and this issue, and they have a half an hour played, we go, okay, something happened really early on, and then we can try and engage with that person and kind of ask them more questions, and hopefully they respond, which they tend to do often, especially when you have the developer tag in the forums as well. So people can easily identify who you are in relationship to the project as well. And so we can kind of engage with them and try and unfold the mystery. Is like, okay, where did this happen, and see if it is something we can improve, or if it's something that we have to acknowledge early on and warn people, hey, there's going to be this issue. And then we also can take that feedback and maybe apply it to the tutorial that we're working on as well.
It sounds fascinating, because I guess in a way, otherwise you'd have the feedback on the one side, players saying something, and then you have your stats on the other side, and they wouldn't marry as easily together.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you have to look at that, because perception's reality. Even if you have hard facts and stats, and you can say all these weapons have these hit points, why does everybody think X weapon is so much more powerful than the others? And you have to really look at that, because a player, how they feel about something, it could be simply a sound effect. The sound effect could sound more devastating. And so it kind of, you bring out an emotional aspect of a player, and they feel more empowered by using a certain weapon. And, and you have to look at that. Okay, so it's like, okay, we know the stats are exactly the same. So where in this experience is it, where is this feeling coming from? Where is this emotion coming from? Because typically in those situations, it's very subjective, right? And it's like, you could be having a really good day, or you could go up against somebody who's having a good day and you're not having such a good day. And, maybe you're a little tired, so you're not responding as quickly as you usually do. And so all these factors come into place, but you really want to look at it. So it's like, okay, people love the sound of this. So there's only difference. This one has a different sound effect when it hits a player. So maybe you want to improve the sound effect on another weapon, and then people will start to enjoy the experience from that weapon and that immersion that comes from, all those pieces connecting together. So like you said, hard stats don't always mean the truth, because perception is the truth.
Sort of makes me think like, what if they launch some early access games on the new Xbox with the Kinect that can measure your pulse and stuff like that? So there are all kinds of potentials there for developers, right?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I haven't really worked with Kinect, so it's like the last time
Apparently the new one is able to measure your heartbeat, and
that's kind of scary. I just saw recently somebody made a stand, and the stand actually had a cover to like go over your Kinect so that it would block it from being able to see stuff.
I think you can unplug it actually.
Yeah, but wasn't it supposed to not work if you didn't? I don't know. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. So there's some fun things that you can do with that, but then also, I think you got to be really careful, because people are very protective of their privacy. So. And luckily, we don't have that issue right now in War of the Vikings early access.
So if we return to the game for once and talk a little bit about that, what are people enjoying right now with the early access? What can they play right now?
Well, we have six loadouts that we've put together using the 3 classes that we have. So we have like classes, and that kind of defines the kind of some of the skills or the architecture of the character, and it's also going to dictate what weapons are available to that class. And then we put loadouts with different perks so that you can kind of experience different things. So we have one is we're calling him the Huskarl, just for namesake, just to kind of give him an identity. And we have 2 versions of him going on right now. So he is our heavy class, which we call the champion. So he's got more powerful hits. He can when he powers up, his attacks are a bit stronger, but he lacks a shield, and so he's a little bit more vulnerable, and he uses parrying, so it takes a bit more skill to use. But we also have a version of him that has a juggernaut. And the juggernaut, if you get hit by an arrow while you're running, it'll trip you. But if you have the juggernaut perk, then you can just keep running, and he's like keeps powering through. So you can't trip him unless you chase him and tackle him. So he's pretty beefy against archers. So when I play it a lot and with the community, just to see how things are going and just to see it from directly from my perspective. And I'll go in there whenever there's a bunch of archers. I just pick that guy, and I just go through and I just start going on a killing spree, so to speak. Virtual killing spree. That's
when people go to the forum and say it's unbalanced.
Yeah, it's like this guy was killing everybody. No, I mean there is kind of a rock paper scissors scenario to this. It's like if there's a lot of archers who are they have less health, so they're more vulnerable, especially to power attacks. So if you charge up, time your attack correctly, you're going to get some really hard hits on those guys. And when you're an archer, you tend to pull back and you stay zoomed in. So we kind of pull the camera over the shoulder to kind of reduce that peripheral, to kind of simulate that, that focus that an archer needs. So then they don't see you, and you can just walk up to them and take them out, and then they're like, oh, but they know why, and that's a great thing. It was like I was focused, I was zoomed in, and I didn't see him sneaking up on me. So it's pretty. It's
like being a sniper in any shooter game.
Exactly.
If you run around with the scope all the time, you gotta quick scope things, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you need to pull out and kind of look at your surrounding. We also for squads, we have this great feature that you can target an enemy, and it puts this kind of red glow around them, so that, and you can kind of you can even see that through objects to some extent. So it makes it really good. I try often when I'm in my squad to target archers, because then if you have an archer on your team as well, it just kind of like, it's almost kind of like a mental thing. It's like when people see that, they focus on that target much more than they do a target that doesn't have that glow. I've seen it happen so much more than it did when we had a similar system in War of the Roses, but it wasn't as like in your face. And so you see a lot of an archer on your team, he'll start trying to take out that guy, that archer, and he'll start focusing on him as a ranged opponent. And that, I think that really starts to come when the game comes to life, when people are using the targeting specifically and using it for tactics wise, and trying to use that to, encourage their team to, attack a certain opponent if they're causing an issue. And then you kind of group together, and that kind of feeds back into the Vikings and how they fought, like they fought as a group. And so we've tried to do these things so that it's a choice and it happens naturally. And when it happens naturally and people just play it that way because it's what is fun and it makes sense and it flows together naturally, is when the game really comes to life.
That's an interesting point, because I think it's been a trend in sort of team-based multiplayer games, perhaps, to sort of implement mechanics that sort of push this a lot, the teamwork aspects. But you sort of want to have it come out a little bit more organically. Is that approach?
That's actually the perfect word, and I think I was thinking about that in my head when I was speaking earlier. Yeah, but make it organic. It's like there should be these little things in it, and it happens just because that is what's going to make you the most successful, and not because you
boost.
Exactly. Boost, or we're not forcing you to do it. It's like, if you don't do this, then you fail. Like we want it to be like, okay, we're gonna perform in the best way that makes us the most successful, and just trying to facilitate that. I mean, it's tricky. I'm sure that there's things that we could do better, and there's things that we can absolutely improve on that. But we've really, I think the kind of like the glow that we have around teammates is a blue, and it's a bit more subtle. Then we have like a green, which is a bit more vivid for your squad mates. So it's really easy to find your squad mates, and it's much easier to stick together. And at first we were really concerned. It's like, okay, here's this kind of like aura thing going on. Are people going to get mad and start, yelling, "I'm Rick James" and stuff like that? And it's like, so we were like, okay, is this going to work? But very quickly, because it is a game, very quickly, it's almost like your brain just doesn't even think about it anymore. It kind of just disappears into the folds of the action and the combat, and your enemies aren't glowing as well, and you start using it as like a way of like trying to avoid hitting your teammates because you can TK your friends, so friendly fire is on, so to speak. So you start really utilizing that, and if you see your squad mate and you see him kind of in trouble, you notice him, you see him fighting, you can see that glow, and it catches your attention, and you're like, oh, he's in a fight, let me go and help him out. And I think that that's the one thing that we did that actually improved team play much more than anything else we've done.
So I guess it's about pointing these things out to the player rather than sort of forcing them to do anything. It's just be aware of these things.
Exactly. I think that's the perfect word, being aware. Doing everything we can to make our player aware, and without breaking immersion. And that's it's super tricky. Like, that's what we were afraid of, that glow. Like, does it like break immersion? But for me, it doesn't. And I was super nervous when we discussed it. When we had a design roundtable, I was like, oh God, okay, but let's try it. I mean, you'll never know if you don't try it. And so,
some players may not like it. I mean,
yes. And we have an option in the HUD to turn it off. Yeah. So you can go in the menu and just turn it off if you really don't like it. And it's also better when you make a video. I mean, when you turn that off, it's like, because when you're playing, certain things become subtle and less obvious. But if you go back and you're watching a clip of somebody playing, then those things kind of tend to oddly stand out. And animations, like bad animations, also tend to stick out a lot more when you have just a static video and you're just watching it for entertainment. So we may put those options in, not only for people who don't like it, but also for people who are trying to make something for entertainment value, make cool trailers and show off their combat and their fighting.
So the game that people are playing now, what's in terms of like what you aim to launch sometime early 2014, what's there now, and sort of will you build it up and have players enjoy more of it as you go? Yeah,
so for early access, what we're doing is we're kind of rotating through specific maps so we can get feedback on those maps and then iterate on them and bring them back in. But basically, we're aiming to have around 4 cool, nice game modes. Some of them are the basic obvious, is like team deathmatch, and then we've revamped our conquest and made it make a little bit more sense and have better UI to kind of like communicate to the players what's going on. And it's a little less like traditional conquest as well. It's kind of like almost, I would call it like objective based. It kind of has this tug of war experience to it, where the Vikings are trying to push over to a certain location and the Saxons are trying to push them back. And then we're looking at, we have a mystery one that we haven't really settled on yet, so we're still like dabbling in that and trying to see what it is that, like, our community, when they play it, when they're playing the game, what is it that they dream of? What's that dream game mode that they feel like really kind of speaks to this experience? And so we're working on a couple like concept ideas for that. And then we have our arena game mode, which is a one life one, and then we have a version that we call battle, which is on the big maps, which is up to 64 players, and then we want to keep it down to the 16 players for the arena ones, which is really small, fun, cool maps. And then we have a really cool one releasing in our next update. It's called Crag, and it's actually basically just a small little ledge on a cliff, about like not much bigger than the room we're in right now, and it's the most comical, fun. Maybe comical is the wrong word, but it's just such a fun game place to have this battle on, because you have this cliff on the side and this huge drop. We have this like awesome, just the artist did an amazing job for the scene, the backdrop scenery, so you feel like you're in this huge area, on the side of this giant cliff, and it's just so fun and exhilarating. It's like you're trying not to get knocked off the cliff, and
sounds like Smash Bros or something.
Yeah, so it's just really fun. So by that time we're looking at having we're gonna have around 7 maps and around 4 game modes, and we're gonna have definitely have the 3 major classes that you'll be able to choose from, and then you'll be able to upgrade and equip them and change their cosmetic looks. Once you've gotten past the initial stages, you'll start unlocking customizable loadouts, so you can start mixing and matching and picking your own kind of perks and kind of picking your own style and how you like to play. And then there also is going to be a nice cosmetic tree of ways you can change your look, change your colors of your outfits, change your helmets, your beards. You'll be able to put custom beards and different beard versions on, and those are actually really fun. Lots of different helmets and things like that, just so that people can really kind of express themselves. And we're going to do that in a tiered system. So there's going to be a tier 1, 2, and 3. And so, when you get to the tier 3 ones, those are pretty expensive, and it's usually the guys that are really skilled that are going to be able to play those, and you'll unlock access to those by your level of experience.
So it'll be just like the real Vikings. You can see on the beard if someone who's...
Yeah, exactly. So the guy that has all the jewels and he has the nice long beard, you're going to be like, okay, this guy's, he means business. And we have some cool different types of beards for the Saxons that, kind of we feel like reflect it. We don't 100% know, but they have the suit and who helmet where obviously they like the mustaches, and so we have some guys with mustaches and stuff like that. So you'll have some cool level, 3-tiered systems for the Saxons as well. We don't want to forget about them. And they have some really cool colors and stuff. They're more in the warm colors, so you get a lot of reds and oranges and yellows. So they're very, vibrant, aggressive colors, and the Vikings are on the more cool spectrum. So they're more blues and purples and greens and things like that. But we'll give them a lot of variety as well. So yeah, there's a lot of, that's the areas that goes really cool. And one thing we've really tried to focus on is we want pretty much all weapons you'll get access to right away. We don't want to hold back gameplay experiences. So, but you'll just have a very crummy looking version, but it'll perform exactly the same. Going back to perception's reality, we also probably want to be careful with that, so somebody doesn't think another spear that looks just differently and has more, design to it, more art patterns to it, is more powerful, but it won't be.
Maybe you'll feel more powerful and placebo effect and everything.
Yeah, and also the guys that get access to that tend to be, they'll have ranked up, so they'll be more proficient likely in the weapon, so it might give that perception as well. But but we want to give those right away, and making perks and stuff available extremely quickly and easily, attaining a more what we want to do with those is once a player has played for a certain time, and we'll guesstimate as best as possible, like, okay, they played for this long, so they must have reached this certain kind of understanding of the mechanics of the game. So we'll make this thing available to them now, because this one might take a bit more understanding. So we don't want a new player to kind of maybe put that perk on themselves and then and then have a really, really bad experience just because they haven't reached that full understanding of how the system works yet.
All right. And I guess you got some work left to do. How is it working with this game when it's sort of live and you're still designing it?
Well, yeah. So you have to be really careful what you release. So we've been like very careful. Like there's like a spear is a weapon type that we haven't released yet, that we've been really focusing on getting as best as possible before we get it out to them, because we really want to get it to that point where it's more about fine tuning. So that's a perfect example of somewhere where, like, we originally wanted to release it in the beginning of November, but we realized we needed to push it to the next update. So we'll, making little small adjustments like that. But I think the big thing is like just really communication. Like, I think that's the biggest thing you have to be super, super aware of, and understand that these people are kind of, they're putting their trust in you very early on, and and so you need to reciprocate that, that loyalty, or that, that commitment, or that belief in us, and posting and keeping them super updated, and being very transparent, and being very honest with them, and also really actually taking their feedback into consideration. I mean, if you're just doing, if you're putting it out there just because that's, you want to gain attention, or you just want quick access to some funds, then that's probably the wrong reason to do it. So, and for us, it actually added additional work, because now we need to branch off the game every 2 weeks. Around every 2 weeks, and then start fixing all the bugs after we've introduced a lot of new code, because that always makes it unstable. So when you're developing, you have what we call the trunk, and then you create a branch off of that, and then you start fixing things in that, and and then so this build becomes really unstable, because all the programmers and all the artists start injecting a whole bunch of new stuff in there, and then you have this one that you just fix bugs, and you polish it, and then you release it, and then you kind of go back to the beginning. So doing that on a around almost on a every 2 week basis, it's a lot of work for our build manager and those guys who are just kind of like constantly pumping that out. And then we have our QA guys that are constantly testing and trying to make sure that we have a new stable build, for the next update. That also includes all the new things that we promised in our roadmap. I could go on and on, but I'll just cut it off there.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thanks.